right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Couch Warrior Podcast Fantasy Edition. I'm your host, Mike, as usual, and today I am joined with our very first guest on this particular show, PrizePicks. What's up, man? You want to introduce yourself real quick to the crowd?
Yes, sir. So I'm PrizePicks. Some of y'all probably see me on Gordo's streams. I do UFC, anything MMA related on PrizePicks, Underdog, Monkey Knife, Thrive. I also do anything basketball related, and hopefully, whenever football comes up this season, I'll be popping with that. So it's good to. I'm glad for you to have.
So, if anyone's new to the show, sorry about that. You cut off for a sec. I thought you were done, but yeah, so anybody new to the show, what we do here is we break down the upcoming UFC card, but we do so from a fantasy perspective rather from a straight up betting perspective. I used to do DraftKings, but it's not really my forte, so stop doing that. I like PrizePicks, so that's the number one thing we do on this show. And then we also do Underdog Fantasy, which is essentially the same thing. And then we do Monkey Knife Fights, which is pretty new to me, but I like to think we got a good thing going. The charts seem to help, so let's see what we can do. Let's see what we can come up with this week. How does that sound, Q3?
Yeah, I'm ready to go.
All right. So what we'll do is we'll start with the first categories. So if you've never used PrizePicks, there's 4 different categories for picks. You can do fight time, you could do significant strikes, fantasy score, and takedowns. And if you've never used PrizePicks before, what it does is it allows us to bet on fighter props that we don't normally get on books. For example, while I can go and I can bet for Trae Young to get over or under 20 baskets, I can't bet on Adesanya to get over under 50 strikes, 100 strikes. I can't do that on a book. I think DraftKings started kind of offering that kind of thing on some lines, but I don't have that available. I don't think most people do. So that's why DraftKings is lit for me. I like to do that. I think there's a lot of good spots to find. And the one downside is that unlike a book where you can just play a bet straight, you can't play any bet straight on PrizePicks. You have to, I guess you can call it a parlay. You have to group them up with at least one other pick. You can do up to 4, but I only do up to 2. I don't know how Key 3 likes to roll, but I don't like to do more than 2. I'll do my occasional 4 person because it's like a 10 times payout, but I keep it to 2 people. How about you, Key 3? What do you do normally?
So I like to have about like 4 or so picks overall and just mix and match from there. And then that usually gives you the most chance for value and doesn't screw you over if you like go too hard with like a 4-pick power play or something.
That's exactly what I do too. Kind of like a round robin pretty much. But all right, so we can get started. This is my least favorite category. If anyone who's watched the show before, they already know. I just feel like, I just went over it. I just said how PrizePicks lets us bet the cool props. This fight time, we already have this available on books. PrizePicks sets it up a little differently, but it's essentially the same thing with overs and unders. But we'll go over them. I have the first column that's for PrizePicks, what the line is set at. The column next to that on the right, that's covering what the books have it at. And then we just have the numbers for how many times it's been hit on the over and the past stats. So normally the way I do it is fighter to fighter and, talk about each one. But with a guest, I figured we're going to try something new. And me and Key 3 will just talk about each category in particular, like in general, and what spots we might like there. So I'll start off. As I mentioned, I don't like this category, so I only have one pick here, and that's probably going to be the Tavares and Duplessis over 14.75 minutes. So we can call that 15 minutes. So this one's interesting, right? It's the same reason why I've been having a hard time betting the fight doesn't go, is that Duplessis finisher, constantly getting finishes. That's his path to victory most of the time. I don't think he can win a decision here. So I think if he's going to win, it's going to be by finish. And Tavares, he's not a finisher. We look at his last 10 fights. He's covered this line 7 of 10 times. So the numbers would indicate, if Tavares is fighting, this should probably go over. But with Duplessis in the mix, I feel like it's a little bit of a different equation here. So I kind of like the under, and I think I'm going to have that in some of my plays, the under 14.75 minutes. But in terms of this category, that's it for me. How about you, Key 3?
So what I'm liking the most right now is Israel Adesanya and Jared Cannonier, 22.5 minutes, and I like the under on that. Um, I really think that Adesanya is going to go for the kill here. I think a lot of people have forgot who he is. And I think that he's going to put on a masterclass against Cannonier. And I don't think the Cannonier is going to be able to keep up. I really, honestly, if I had to guess on a specific round, I see a third round finish. But I'm really excited for this fight, and I'm really excited to see Adesanya put on a show.
Yeah, I'm hyped for him to come back. His last fight, I had to root against him because Bobby Knuckles is my guy, but also a big Izzy fan, so I'm hyped to see him come and return to form. I also think, one second, had the air conditioner blowing on me. I also think that he's going to possibly get a finish here. I guess the under is actually a pretty decent spot then because Cannonier, he's not going to win this by decision. If he wins this, he's knocking Izzy out. And then Izzy, I agree with you. I think round 3, he's live. And I already sprinkled round 4 and 5 on the books too because I think those are live as well. I think he can break Cannonier over 5 rounds. So I don't hate that look either for the under 22 and a half minutes. I don't like playing those overs when it's 5 rounds pretty much. I don't like playing that over. But all right, next category up, we got significant strikes. This one's pretty straightforward, not much to explain. Just how many significant strikes are going to get. So my usual angle is this. I look for grapplers and I look for people who like funky spinning stuff, right? For example, Umar, for example, Said Nurmagomedov. Those are my ideal people to go under in significant strikes. And when I go over, it's normally going to be a low number when I think that takedowns aren't going to be happening and it's going to be stuck on the feet. That's usually when I'll hit the over. So for this category, let's see what I got going. I wrote it down. So my favorite spot here, I was going to do the Lawler 73.5, but Underdog Fantasy has a better number, which we'll talk about later. So I'm going to dub that here. And I'm going to be playing Duplessis. Where is he? There he is. I'm going to be playing Duplessis 57.5 strikes under. So we look at his last 2 UFC fights. He hasn't hit this number in either. They're not even close, not even half. And I don't think that it's going to be much different here. I think that either Tavares is going to be picking him apart on the feet and we'll get to a decision without him touching that 57.5, or Duplessis gets his knockout like a lot of people think he will. And then I really don't think he's going to hit this number. So I like the under on that spot right there. And then just looking at it real quick, I kind of like Miller, but I don't know how I feel about that one. How about you, Keith? What are you looking at here?
So what I'm liking the most out of these, I really like O'Malley on the over. I know the line is super high, especially for a 3-round fight, but the guy averages 8 strikes per minute. It's insane how accurate he is. And I know we get caught up in the antics and some of the flash and the 6'9" stuff, but the guy is really special with the way he manages range, especially with shorter opponents. And Pedro's going to have to really explode his way in a lot, being so much shorter than Sean. So I think that Sean's going to really just tap, keep him at distance. I do expect a finish in the 3rd or so round. But I also know that Pedro hasn't been finished by even the past 4 champions he's fought. So I really expect Pedro to hold strong. And with significant strikes, it is a little difficult because whenever you're betting on something other than fantasy score, there's a lot more variables involved. With significant strikes, you're also pretty much betting that the fight goes longer, etc., things like that. And so I don't really like to target sig strikes as much, but I really do think that Volk and O'Malley will both be going close to the distance at least. And I think that we'll see the volume for them both.
Yeah, I was tempted on the Volk one too. If you look at it, out of his 4 or 5 round fights, he's hit this number all 4 times. So I was tempted on that too. I might get there, but probably not. For the O'Malley one, I agree with you that he should hit that. But like you said, I just don't like targeting those really high numbers. If I'm going to go over, I like to try to find a reason to hit, like, for example, when he's 18.5, like definitely tried to convince myself about that one. but I'm not going to get there. But we'll move on to the next category. My personal favorite, and it sounds like you like it a bit more too, fantasy score. So for anybody new, I'll run through this real quick. PrizePicks does fantasy scoring as well, just like DraftKings does, but it's a different system, different rules, and there's two major differences. The first one, and probably the biggest one, is that PrizePicks does not grade control time. So whereas on DraftKings, somebody like Umar, who gets a ton of top control, is going to score high. He's not going to score as high on PrizePicks just based off that top control because it's not scored. So if you're going to be looking at a grappler in terms of fantasy score going over, you're going to want a volume wrestler, someone who's going to get a bunch of takedowns, not just get like one or two and hold them down. And the second difference is that they grade takedown defense on PrizePicks, whereas they don't do that on DraftKings. So on PrizePicks, if a fighter defends a takedown, they get 3 points. And while that doesn't seem like a lot, if you get a volume wrestler and who's missing a lot, let's say they miss 10 takedowns, that's 30 points right there that we got to consider when we're making our choices. So that's just how that works. I'll run through the scoring criteria real quick. Significant strikes are 0.6 points per strike. Every takedown is 6 points. Every submission attempt is 5 points. Every knockdown is 12 points. And then a finish in round number 1 is 100 points. A finish in round number 2 is 75 points. Finish in round number 3 is 50 points. And then it's 30 points, I believe, for round 4 and 25 for round 5 and 20 points for a decision. So that's the scoring. And then in terms of what I like here, something I'm usually looking for is, if I think an underdog is going to win, obviously I'm going to want to target the favorite here for the fantasy score, because PrizePicks, they only put the favorites, right? So if you think an underdog's going to win, you're going to think that favorite's going to go under their number. So for example, when I'm talking about Ian Gary, right, I'm going to be playing the under here. Ian Gary set at 81.5. He's hit this one of 2 times, only when he got his finish in round number 1 against Jordan Williams. And I think Gabe Green can win this fight. I think there's a good shot that Gabe Green does win this fight. And so if Gabe Green wins, Gary's not getting near this number, right? And then if Green loses, I still think that he can bring it to Gary. I still think he can make it a really tough, close fight. And I think he can make it hard for Gary to go over this 81.5. So I am going to be playing that under. I'm also going to be playing the under for, let's see what I got. I've got Jessica Rose Clark, the under for her, 72.5. She's only covered this 2 of 7 times in her UFC career, so that's already good for us. That's 29%. And the reason I like this is if you look at her wins, even in some of her wins, she's not hitting this number, right? She's still not covering. So I expect this to be a low scoring bout, even though she's going to be wrestling. For the same reason I mentioned, ground control isn't scored. Takedowns are scored, right? So if Clark is getting her down, but holding down Stolyarenko, because Stolyarenko is going to be fishing for those arm bars, I think she's not going to be scoring a lot, even if she's winning. And I don't think she's going to throw 100 strikes that's going to carry her over here. So even though I'm on the Clark side, and I think Clark wins, I'm still going to be playing under her fantasy score. And I'm also going to be targeting the other woman's favorite, Barber over here, 81.5. She's covered this 4 of 8 times in her UFC career, so half the time. And I just think that this is a big step up. And I personally think that Jessica Ai has a very good chance of winning this fight. I think that Jessica Ai is on a different level than anyone else that Macy Barber has faced thus far. And look, like she lost to Miranda Maverick. There's really no wiggle room there. I really think that she lost. I think most people believe so, except those 2 judges. But I just think that on the feet, Jessica Ai is much better than Barber. And Barber depends on that clinch. She depends on the control against the fence. She depends on her muscles, her strength. And I don't think she's going to have that much of an advantage there against Jessica Ai. So because of that, I'm going to be playing Barber's under as well, because even if she wins, I think that Jessica Ai is going to make it difficult for her to score high, especially if we're stuck against the fence for most of the fight. So those are my 2 spots that I like the most here. And the Duplessis one I looked at, but I rather target his significant strikes than the fantasy score in case he does get a knockout, because if he gets a knockout, I'm going to lose the fantasy score one, but I could still hit the significant strikes. But how about you, Keith 3? What are you looking at here?
So there's a lot to like on this slate for fantasy score, and a lot of the community likes the same picks. Duplessis, I am on his fantasy score. Sprinkle it in a little bit. I'm not saying it's a smash play. He has really big movements. His fighting style is really awkward. After watching the film, I was caught off guard. Because I feel like I remembered his style being a little different, but it was so weird. But he gets his movements off, and he's very athletic, very strong. I think that he could get Tavares out of there with the big strike. And I think that if he wants to try to win on the cards, I'm pretty sure all of his wins are finishes. But I think that he can outpoint Tavares possibly if he actually knows how to conserve his gas tank. So I like the over on there. Israel Adesanya, we're going back to him over well, it was at 107.5. And you can see a lot of these plays I tried to post as soon as they come out on Twitter. So make sure you follow me at Key3Picks. But 110.5, I still like it. I think he still goes over. There's a great chance of a finish. As I've said, I've already spoke his praises. He's going to put on a show. I really believe this is going to be one of those type historic nights. And we're going to see something similar to Silva and Griffin. I really do believe that. Then next, I think O'Malley is now at 112.5. Me and the guys got him at 110.5. Not too crazy of a bump. But with fancy score, whenever they bump by even 2 points, it does matter slightly. And I still like 112.5, just not as much. I think he gets the volume. I think he is gonna knock down Pedro. I think I read one stat that was insane, saying that Pedro had been knocked down a certain amount of times throughout. And knockdowns, as you know, count as 12 points. So that's huge for us. So we want to make sure that we're targeting that. And then next, Jalen Turner. I'm a Jalen Turner guy. I'm really big on length and range and knowing how to use it in this sport. I believe that if you don't have physical attributes, you're most likely not going to succeed long term in the UFC. So at 6'3", him fighting Brad Riddell, who is 5'7". Brad Riddell is a very, very talented striker. We saw that versus Rafael Fiziev, but he's going to have to punch his way in. And it's going to be a lot of big explosions if he wants to get in range to a guy who's 6'3". And Jalen Turner, his length is just insane for this weight class. I honestly think that he should be at 170, guessing by the cut, because I'm pretty sure he walks around 185, 190. And so just trying to make sure that we're targeting guys who have the attributes. I think that Jalen goes over. He's kill or be killed. He goes for the finish. He's very open about that. He's not here to play for the cards. And so I think that we see him go over 85.5. And I'm honestly surprised that Vegas doesn't have him a little bit more favored. And I think that there's some good value with that. So if you're doing any straight bets, I would hammer that, honestly. And then next, Alex Pereira. Okay, so we all know the story. We all know the history, obviously. Flatlined Izzy, needed oxygen, all that. We've seen the memes. I think that Sean Strickland is a madman. And I think that he's going to actually try to stand with Alex. And that's a death wish. That man's power is disgusting. Like I don't think I've ever seen power like that. And the way that he really gets his hips into his hooks and things like that and really digs to the body, I think that we're going to see Sean maybe get put out on a stretcher. I think this may be the fight where Sean gets flatlined. And so I'm really excited to see Alex. And I think that this is what the UFC wants. Adesanya, Pereira. I think this in the cards. It's written already, I think. And so I paired those two up a lot, and that was actually my biggest play of the week. Was Pereira and Adesanya, because it's a storyline play slightly, but I really do believe that Pereira has good enough takedown defense and is athletic enough. Is 6'4", 185, training with Glover Teixeira. I think he's athletic enough to really get up from scrambles and things like that with Strickland, who's not a big-time offensive wrestler. Once he's down there, he's good. And Strickland does do good work on the ground. But getting down there, it's not like his wrestling is elite. And those are all my fantasy score plays. I would be careful with Volk. I don't know if third time's a try with the charm with Max. And I also do agree with Mike. With Ian Gary, I'm not a believer at all. I believe that he just thinks way too much of himself. I think that he's going to get taught a lesson. So I also do like the under there.
Word. So in regards to Turner, I'm honestly tempted on that spot as well. I'm high on Turner. I did bet him money line. I've been backing him in all his fights. He's been making me a ton of money. I didn't back him in Frivola, so been good with him. And I agree. I'm huge on size difference. I think that size bullying is a big advantage, and it's a big thing in MMA. And while I think that in the pocket, Riddell's going to be better, I think that that's where the danger here is for Turner, and that's why I'm a bit worried about playing this. I do think that he should be able to win. And even over 3 rounds, if they do go to a decision, I don't think this is too crazy of a number. If he picks up a knockdown, if he gets a few takedowns, a few sub attempts, add in the strikes, I think he can get it even without a finish. So I do like the Turner. I do have to push back a bit on the Pereira because I'm on Sean Strickland, obviously. I'm not playing the under here for Pereira because I agree with you that Sean is a madman. And he actually said today that he does plan on standing. I don't know how much to take from that. He's a psycho. I wouldn't be surprised. He was talking about how Pereira is not that good, that he just has a big size advantage. So if he's actually going to act that way, I think you're going to be 100% right, and he's going to go to sleep. But in regards to the wrestling, Andreas Michailidis is not a wrestler, and he took down Pereira, controlled him for a whole round. So I think that Sean Strickland, just because he's not a grappler and just because he doesn't really grapple, I don't think that means much. I think that if he's smart, if he's got the right game plan, he can implement it. I think he does have those tools. We've seen him in a bunch of grappling competitions recently. So I think he's live to win, but I agree with you that it's looking like he might stand up with him. And if he does stand down, I don't think he's going to win. But went to the next category. And the last one, we got takedowns. And, it really depends on me week by week. Sometimes I love this category. Sometimes I hate it. Here I've got two spots that I like. I like Clark. I like Clark for the over 1.5. She's only covered it 3 to 7 times, but look, when she chose to be grapple heavy, like Jocelyn Edwards, 5 takedowns. And I do believe that she's going to be looking for the takedowns here. I do believe that she's going to get them. Stolyarenko doesn't have this crazy takedown defense, and she does accept the bottom because she wants those arm bars. She's good at them, so she accepts that position. So I do like the over 1.5 for Clark's takedowns, and I do like Muniz to get over 1.5 as well. He's covered this 4 of 6 times. You look at Uriah Hall, he got taken down. I believe it was, here, I'm going to pull up the number. I'm talking about the ACJ fight with Uriah Hall because that's the one I keep looking at when I'm looking at this fight. I feel like that's the most relevant one. Yeah, so ACJ took him down 3 times, and I think this is such a similar style matchup. I just think higher of Muniz than I do of ACJ. So I do think he'll get at least 2 takedowns, and I think he's going to hit that. One spot that I've been eyeing is a Miller half a takedown because you only need one. I love numbers like this because you literally just need 1 takedown, and that is his game. I know that it was 2013 when they last fought, but when they fought, Miller did get a takedown. He couldn't hold Cerrone down, but he did get the takedown. So while I'm not on it yet, I am tempted by that one as well. What are you thinking about here, Key 3?
Yeah, so like I said earlier, I try to tell all of my followers as much as possible. Target fantasy score because that's where there's less variables. You have more opportunity to hit up on value. Takedowns is a little tricky. Personally, the only spot that I like a lot this week, I do like that Muniz pick, the armbar king. I'm really thinking that Strickland is going to go under 2 here. I think that there's a chance that Alex gets him out of there early. And like I said, especially after watching that media day interview, I really think that the guy's gonna try to strike. Like I really believe so. I think that he's gonna get in there, adrenaline's gonna take over. He's gonna be the alpha male that he claims to be, and he's gonna try to strike with this guy, and he's gonna go to sleep. And I believe that if he doesn't shoot early, then I don't think that he even has a chance in rounds 2 and 3. Once Pereira gets cooking and gets a rhythm and also starts get moving and bouncing, I think that his sprawl is going to be great. And like I said, with Pereira working with Glover Teixeira, well versed on the ground, obviously. And I really believe that he's going to be able to defend a lot of these takedowns. I'm hoping that time in the cage with Bruno Silva is going to help us play a part here with Pereira, and really shows. I'm glad that he didn't get a quick knockout in that fight because he needed some octagon time. And so I believe that he's going to be good at defending. And I think that 2 keeps us safe. 1.5 would have been a little tricky. 2 keeps us really safe. I like it for a push at the worst. I don't think that there's any chance in hell that Strickland gets 3. And so I'm hoping that Pereira can stay strong and we'll end up going under here.
Yeah, I don't hate that one. Even though I'm on Strickland, over 2 takedowns is going to be rough. You can look at the Uriah Hall fight where he got 4, but that was also 5 rounds. So I don't hate that take at all. But that's it for PrizePicks. So we're going to move right along to the next app, Underdog Fantasy. There's not much to explain here. It's literally the exact same thing, except Underdog Fantasy also includes underdogs sometimes. So there's just that difference, just a few more spots that might not exist on PrizePicks. And then they also have finishes available sometimes. So I have that in the other category. We'll do that one last. So starting from the jump, we got significant strikes. And let's see what I've got 2 spots here. I mentioned this one earlier on PrizePicks, but obviously the number is lower here. So I think it's better. I like the Miller over 29.5 strikes. I think that, I think this is going to be a stand-up fight. I think that Miller will want it to go to the ground, but Cerrone's takedown defense, even now, even in his washed form, is still really good. He's still very good on the ground as well. He's still participating in grappling competitions actively. So I'm not worried about Miller really taking him down. I'm definitely not worried about Miller controlling him. And I'm also not on the same board as everybody else who thinks that Miller's just going to wash him. I'm going to be betting Cerrone by decision, mostly for the value, but also because I think he can do it. And because of those reasons, I think we're going to be looking at a lot of stand-up here. And 29.5 is not a big number. Even in his last 2 fights where it was all stand-up against the 2, I almost called them prospects, but I don't think I can call Eric Gonzalez a prospect. But up-and-comers, and he went over on both of those. It was a stand-up affair. I think this is going to be a stand-up affair. So I really like the over 29.5 here. And the other spot, I mentioned it too. I like Lawler to go over 66.5. He's done this 8 of 10 times in his last 10 fights. So 80%. You're getting a much better price than you're getting on PrizePicks by seven strikes. So I do like this a lot. I think that Barberena is not taking Lawler down, and Lawler is not going to be taking Barberena down, even though Barberena's takedown defense is terrible. So it's going to be stand-up, right? And then do we think Barberena knocks Lawler out? I don't think so. Does Lawler knock Barberena out? I also don't really think so. So if it goes 3 rounds and they're on the feet, I think they're going to crush this number. So I like the over 66.5 as well. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I'd be tempted on the Strickland one. It's not on PrizePicks, so we didn't get to talk about it just yet. But it's set at 58.5. He's covered this 8 of 10 times. And if he really does do this stupid thing where he's going to stand with Pereira, if Pereira doesn't finish him, he'll probably get here. He's got a very high volume. But again, I think if they're standing, Pereira's probably going to find that chin. So right now, I'm sticking with Miller over 29.5, and I'm going to be playing that Lawler over 66.5. What are you thinking, Key 3?
Yeah, so I do agree with Strickland over 58.5 if he can survive long enough. He fights behind that jab. He's the jab king in the middleweight division. And so I think that if he fights behind that jab, we're really going to see him get past that pretty quickly, especially because Alex is not the most defensive striker. He's gotten tagged a little bit. He's content with fighting in the pocket a little bit. And he believes in his power, obviously. So I think that he's very hittable. And unlike Adesanya, where Adesanya is more of a technician, we see a lot more L steps, things like that. Pereira is get into you, tag the body, really dig with his shots. But otherwise, in terms of over-unders on Underdog, I don't usually ever see a lot of opportunities most weeks. And what I try to tell my guys is target rivals. Rivals, they usually don't have a clue what they're doing whenever they're setting lines. And there's a lot of room for exploiting that. And so on the rival side, me and the guys got Cannonier over Adesanya takedowns. We got it at a flat rate though. And so it wasn't the plus 0.5 for Adesanya, I think now it is. And we had it flat. What I told everybody is that's pretty much a risk-free bet because Adesanya has no chance of shooting. I don't think that he's ever landed a takedown in his UFC career. And Jarrett's strength does carry over to middleweight. He was a former heavyweight. We all know the story. He dropped down multiple weight classes. And Jarrett was talking about in interviews getting his hands on Izzy. So I like that. Now, not so much at this point with Adesanya having the plus 0.5 bonus. But if you want to throw it in and sprinkle it in a little bit now, I really do like that too. My smash play on Underdog, and this was my favorite, Volkanovski plus 5.5 strikes. I like him over Max here. Volk has never been outstruck by anyone in the UFC. Jose Aldo, you name him, Chad Mendez, anybody. He's never been outstruck by anybody in the UFC. This includes Max. He outstruck Max, I think, respectively in their fights, 23 and 35. Volk scrambles your brain whenever you're standing in front of him. All the city kickboxing guys, I know Volk is with Joe Lopez, all those guys, they are so good at scrambling your brain, getting you thinking, getting you into their fight. And so I believe that we see Volk control the fight here again. Sadly, I'm a Max fan. I really hope Max catches him for my sake. Yeah, facts. Like, shout out Max, Blessed Express, baby. So I'm really hoping that Max can get it done, but I do think betting with your mind and research and logic, Volk here is going, I believe, going to go over this and go over Max here. And then my third one, and sprinkle this in. This is another one that's sort of risk-free in my opinion. Sean O'Malley and Pedro Moonhouse and their takedowns. I like Pedro over Sean. Pedro's world class on the ground. I don't think people know because Pedro fell in love with his power throughout the UFC for whatever reason. But Pedro is elite on the ground. His jiu-jitsu is world class. And I think that he's going to want to close the distance here and try to get a takedown. I think that we're at least going to get the attempts. And that, to me, I'm okay with living with the results at the end of the day. And so I think we're going to get the volume here because Pedro's about 5'6", Sean's at that 5'11" range. He's going to have to close the distance. I think we're going to see some clinch work against the fence. I hope that Pedro can explode and maybe get a takedown. And we know Sean is not shooting. He'd be stupid to shoot, especially with Pedro's bottom game and the way he can throw up triangles and stuff. I don't believe that we'll see Sean shoot. So it's pretty much risk-free. I think that there is a chance that it just ends up pushing and we see no takedowns, which is very possible. But I think that there is value and you have to try to exploit that here. And so those are my 3 underdog picks that I like the most. And one more slightly on the over-under side. I believe that where is he at? Andre Muniz, over 0.5 submissions. It is a possibility. We know he's the armbar king. And if he gets Uriah down into that world, it's going to get scary for Uriah. So I think that there's a possibility we can see that one. But otherwise, like I said, rivals, especially on underdog, is you want to try to target rivals as much as possible because I'm telling you, they are lost trying to make those lines. And especially whenever they first put them out, there's a lot of flaws in them. And so I make sure to try to check those lines as much as possible on Tuesday, Wednesdays, whenever they're first putting them out, and you can try to exploit them and cash out.
It's the shitty interns they got going sometimes. But I'm with you on the rivals. That's the majority of my picks here as well. I've got 4 of them here. So I like Tavares to get more strikes than, where is it? Duplessis. Where is it? There it is. All right. So yeah, I like Brad Tavares to get more strikes than Duplessis. He's getting an 11.5 strike boost. So that already, I like that a lot. Like I mentioned before, I do think this fight's going to be on the feet. And Duplessis is, he's not a minute winner. He's a moment winner. So he's not putting out a crazy high output. he's mostly working in flurries. Like you mentioned earlier, he's got this really awkward style. Like I originally bet him and ended up hedging the other way because I also retaped it and I was like, this is not what I remembered. So I do think that Tavares can outstrike him, and you're giving me an 11.5 significant strike boost. I love that. And then similar, I like Jessica I over Macy Barber to get more significant strikes. Again, they're giving her a plus 10.5 strike boost. And again, I don't understand that. At distance, Jessica I is the much better striker here, in my opinion. And I don't even think it's close. Macy Barber, she's going to be winning this fight in the clinch in control time positions, and she's not going to be landing a lot of significant strikes there. So I do like Jessica I with that kind of boost. Then let's see, moving back up here, they faded it out. So I wonder if that means they're adjusting the line. I wouldn't be surprised because I think it's a bit off, but Jalen Turner over Riddell for the takedowns. Just need one, and I think he can do it. I do think he's going to take Riddell down at least once. I think that he is going to try to implement that ground game. He's been working on it a lot, and it shows. It looks really good. And while I do think he can hang with Riddell on the feet, it would be smartest to just take him to the ground. So I do think he can hit that. And then my last one, they also faded this one out. So I'm assuming they're going to change it too. But Adesanya over Cannonier in significant strikes. I think Adesanya is going to cover even with that 15 plus on Cannonier. I think Cannonier is going to have a tremendously difficult time finding Adesanya. And I just think Adesanya is going to cover this fairly easily. I really do. I don't see Cannonier touching him up at all. I see Adesanya keeping the range, touching him up from a distance, and definitely covering this. So those are my spots here for rivals. And yeah, we'll move right along. We're up to our last app of the day. So for this one, we won't be looking at charts because it just gets too complicated. Me and Keith 3 have our chart in the background. I'll refer to it if anything. But we'll go through monkey knife fights now. Keith 3, do you already have like spots you like, or do you want to look at them?
No, I already have spots that I like.
So let's hear it.
Okay. So in reference for the underdog guys, they're now like literally in the process of changing lines. They're actually just phased out that Pedro and Sean line. Like I refreshed it as soon as I got done speaking. So make sure that you're hopping on stuff as like fast as possible because they will bump, especially underdog. They have no shame at all. They will not stick to their guns. So make sure you get them in as quick as possible. But on the monkey knife side, pretty sure their fantasy scoring is about the same as PrizePicks.
It's the same.
Yeah, so we want to try to exploit the lines that they have a little bit smaller than PrizePicks. And what I like to do, I like to target more or less fantasy scores. And so here, my first play, O'Malley at 106.5 and Pereira at 84.5. Pereira, I believe we see a knockout. So his score could be at 95. And honestly, I would still like it because I believe that the finish is just inevitable, especially if Sean really does believe he can strike with him. Yeah, the finish is definitely inevitable. And I like O'Malley at 106.5 a ton. And so that I believe is that's very doable even without a finish. I think maybe one or so knockdowns and he blasts past that, honestly, with the way he strikes and his volume. And then I had to show the underdog some love because we haven't really gotten to them too much yet. The more or less on the main card with Holloway and Jared Cannonier. I like Holloway to go over 70.5 fantasy points. I believe that he gets the volume, of course. I believe that there is a chance that he ends up knocking Volk out. I think that we're going to see a different type of game from him this time around. Third time's a charm. Blessed Express, baby. And so I'm really hoping that Max will go over that. And I believe that all the signs point to him going over that with the way he strikes and his volume and his counter punching. I think that we can see him go over that even in a loss, honestly. Throw in some takedown defenses in there. He blasts past that score even in a loss.
In both of his Volk fights, he did cover that, by the way.
Okay, yeah. So I'm very, very confident in that pick, and I like that a lot. And then Jared Cannonier, I've said this whole stream, Izzy's gonna put on a show, man. He's gonna put on a show. This is gonna be exciting. I don't think that Jared has a chance. he has a one-punch KO threat. That's about it. He's not gonna out-technique him. It's possible he sees a few takedowns or so, but not enough volume to get him to 45.5 fantasy points. So I like that as a less, and those are two pairs. If you want to shoot for the stars, I did do a 6-pick here, and on Monkey Knife they do 20 times for the 6-pick, and this is pretty much a recap of damn near all the spots that I like on this card. But we have Volk at more than 110.5 fantasy points, Adesanya more than 107.5 fantasy points, O'Malley more than 106.5 fantasy points, Pereira more than 84.5 fantasy points, and then Holloway and Cannonier the exact same plays I just talked about, more and less. I really believe that we see all of these guys, and I sprinkled very small money on this, of course. We want to focus on bankroll building. That's the way to stay sustainable in this. You don't want to shoot for the stars. I know as much like as enticing as it may be, and the one time every once in a while you may hit, you want to do it again. But you really want to stay with those 2 picks. I threw that sprinkled in just a little bit because I really do like all of those spots, and might as well ride with the things that you like. And I'm not forcing any picks there. So I like that a lot. And those are my 3 slips for Monkey Knife.
Nice. So the 6 one's bold. Yeah, man. But so I actually didn't get a chance to run through the site before the show, so I'm gonna have to do it real quick here. But while you were talking, I was looking, and this caught my eye immediately. I like this. I like O'Malley over Adesanya. He's got a little boost of 1 strike. I do think he's gonna land more strikes here. I think he's gonna be on the feet with Munoz for 3 rounds as well. And we've seen O'Malley outwork from a distance. Crazy output. Adesanya, technician. O'Malley, I think, is more of an output guy. He is also a technician, but I just think he has more output. And then we were talking earlier how Volk outstruck Max every time, but they're giving us the plus 34.5 strike differential here for Max. So I got to take that. Like you mentioned before, like I think Max can do it this time. I really do. I rewatched the second fight like for the 10th freaking time the other day. And again, I scored it for Max. I'm saying this as I had money on Volk the second fight. I had a ton of money on Volk. If he would have lost, my night would have been ruined. Him winning made a crazy night, but I still thought Max won there. So I do think it's possible for him to outstrike him. And with a plus 34.5 strike addition, gotta love that for me. And then let's see. Let me run through this real quick. Not interested in any of these. I looked at all of these already, I think. Yeah, not really interested in these. I have a hard time deciding like what spots I really like on Monkey Knife Fight. I'm still like figuring out my method, but in terms of like straight up matchups, I did target Duplessis and Brad Tavares. I took their fantasy scores. Similar to what I was saying before, I think Tavares wins, so I do think he covers that 36.5. And if we look at his losses in the UFC, I'll pull it up right now on my little chart. So we look at Tavares' losses. He's actually only covered this number, 36.5, 1 time in his 6 losses. So there is that. But I also think that most of the dudes that he lost to are better than Duplessis. And because I think Duplessis loses, I do like the under for his fantasy score. And then another one I have targeted is another one I spoke about earlier, Barber and Jessica I. Similar story. I like Macy Barber to go under, and I like Jessica I to go over. I think that even if Barber wins, this is going to hit. And I think that Jessica I could win, in which case this will definitely hit. So I do like that. I really think Jessica I is a big step up, and I'm not really seeing it with Barber here. And then another one is here, Gabe Green and Ian Gary. I went with the fantasy score as well. Same system, going with the underdog. And I think that Ian Gary can lose this fight. So I'm going with his under. And then real quick, I'll pull up. I usually go to the all-day slate. That's usually where I find most of my spots. And I'll run through them real quick. Jim Miller, Pereira, not interested in that one. Not interested in Max and Volk. Not interested in that one. Definitely not that one. I always wonder how they come up with these pairs. It seems so random. No. Let's see if we have it. I feel like similar to Underdog Fantasy, there's a lot of value in these rapid fires, the rival situation pretty much, but let's see. No, don't like those. And last here. Yeah. Well, I wouldn't want to play Max twice with this, but I do like Sean to beat Barbarina with plus 13.5. That seems good. But anyways, something I do like to play. I play it every single week. I don't know about you, Key 3, but I like Knockout Kings. I haven't looked yet, but if I was going to do it, I would probably do something like this. Jalen Turner. Man, it's hard not to put Pereira in there.
Do it.
I'm on the Sean side though, bro. I guess because I'm on. Oh fuck! But I'm also on Tavares. All right, so I guess I'll probably put Pereira in there. This is probably what my Knockout Kings will look like. I think all three of these guys are live for finishes. I think Gabe Green's probably gonna have the hardest time here. Ian Gary, while I don't think he's the truth, I think he's a good talent. He just needs to calm down and focus on his skills, not his mic skills. Pereira, we already spoke about this a ton. Sean Strickland's just being a moron. And Turner, I think, is live because of that size, because of his skills. I just think he's live for a finish. So I do like one of these guys. I only play the over one, the over half, I mean. So, but yeah, that wraps up all of our fantasy apps, and that means we are done with the show. I want to say thank you to anybody who tuned in to watch us. Appreciate it greatly. Thank you guys. Similar to Key 3, I post all my official picks on my Twitter. I normally like to play early in the week for fantasy as well, because like you said, they adjust the lines because they don't know what they're doing most of the time. They'll put out lines, wait to see where the action goes, and then they adjust. So that's worth noting. I wanted to mention earlier when we were talking about this, I remember when Cannonier was fighting Derek Brunson, I opened up PrizePicks and I went to the takedowns, and they had Cannonier getting 2 takedowns over under, not Brunson, Cannonier. And I was like, what the fuck is this? So I hit that. They took it off immediately. That was gone so quick. But yes, stuff like that happens, man. That's why it's worth checking out early. And yeah, so you guys can find me here on the Couch Warrior Podcast YouTube channel. On Twitter, you can find me at the Couch Warrior Pod. I have a Tuesday show every week that I released yesterday. Had my boy Pat on. It was a dope show. Spoke about the fights, broke them down from a betting perspective. So if you're into that thing, check that out. Wednesdays is my fantasy show. That's what we did today. And then tomorrow, Thursday, I do my show with Lou Betya on the MMA Engine called Bet Elevator. That's the most fun one I do. We look for fun bets that still have a chance of hitting, and it's a blast. So make sure to tune in. And I'm usually on the Saturday roundtable with John Kelly as well. Key 3, tell them where to find you.
Yeah, so follow me at Key3Picks on Twitter. I'm in a few different Discords. As Mike was saying, please be on these lines early. A lot of these guys really don't understand MMA, and that is where we exploit the value. So get on these bets early. Turn on my notifications because I try to put out lines as soon as they come out. I usually check all throughout Mondays and Tuesdays, and try to see whenever they're dropping them and hop on them as quick as possible because there always is value. And I'll stress it all the time. Make sure you're always on different platforms because there will be value somewhere in the industry. I don't know where, but it will be value somewhere. But yeah, no doubt. Shout out to Mike for letting me on. It was such a pleasure being on. I would love to come back. But make sure to follow me at Key3Picks. I'm in a few different Discords. Turn on noties and show love. And my DMs are open for anybody.
Yeah, man, for sure. We're gonna run this back for sure. It was dope. I like having guests on the shows. I like it a lot better than talking to myself in the ether. But all right, guys. So thank you for tuning in, and have a good one. Always the weirdest part, waiting for it to end broadcast.
Yeah, that's like the awkward silence part.